Hey everybody! Well, is our house here in Mexico haunted by evil spirits? I'm going to give you the answer to that and a lot more coming up right now on Douglas and Esperanza's Adventures. We're Douglas and Esperanza, and we decided to leave our lives in the US and move to magical Loreto, Mexico, where we built our boutique resort Pufferfishvillas from the ground up and work running it and saving to expand in the future. Please come with us to follow our journey and live before you die. So if you've watched our channel for a while, you probably know this is a way different video than I've ever made before. And I'll tell you why. I was going to make a video like everyone else is doing around this time of the year about how last year went, because it's just after the New Year's and our plans for the future and all that. But I figured that anyone who's been watching our channel for any period of time knows all about that anyways. So many times I come up with the ideas for my videos when I'm asleep. I wake up and I have this idea in my head, and most of the time I think it all through for about a half an hour, and I fall back asleep and I forget about it. But last night I woke up, it was about 3:30 in the morning, and I decided this is too good. I've got to get up and write this down so I make sure I don't forget it. So I was dreaming about a haunted house basically. And when I woke up, it really reminded me of several experiences I've had in the past with places I lived that had some type of evil entity in them. And trust me, I thought this was all total BS when I was younger. I would have told you, if you said there was ghosts, there was evil spirits, there was anything like this, I would have said, you are crazy. That doesn't exist. But I'm going to tell you why I believe it now. And I'll tell you if I think we have evil spirits here, because we were definitely concerned about that. We are living here in a camp that had been used for thousands of years by Indians while they fished and clammed here on the sea. So there was always a concern of, is there going to be something weird here? I grew up in a normal house in a suburban neighborhood in Oregon City, Oregon. And you can see the house here. It's just a simple, small house. We had a nice big yard and we lived in an awesome neighborhood. So I never got the sense that there were such thing as bad spirits, because that particular house that I grew up in didn't have any bad spirits. In fact, it was always a happy, friendly place. I really liked living there. And because of that, I didn't ever even have a concept of any kind of a bad place. When I was in high school, probably 16 or 17, my parents separated and we moved with my mom into a house in Oregon City, but a little farther out towards the country. And this was the first time that I really experienced not feeling comfortable in my home. This was a rental home. I never felt good in this place. I always felt like there is something bad, something off about the house. And I lived there with my mom and my brother and my sister. We lived in that house for probably a year and a half, and a lot of bad things happened to all of us while we were living in that house. My sister and my brother and my mom and myself all had bad things happen to us. And I don't think any of us liked living in that house. Everybody seemed like they were always upset, anxious, on edge. And I don't get anxiety hardly ever. And it's usually because I've got a big project I have to get done, and it seems like I don't know where to start. I've never gotten anxiety about where I lived or anything like that. But that place just wasn't right. And I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought, this is a crappy house. You know, I had grown up my entire life from being born to 17 in this awesome house that I was super happy in. And then we moved to this other house. I thought, this is just what it's like when you move. You know, you don't like this new house, and and things go wrong and you just don't feel comfortable there. You don't feel at home. But that's not the case. After that, I moved to several other houses. I got married and they were all fine. But then in my later 20s, my wife at the time and I bought a house out in the country. And this house was on a big piece of property, 20 acres. And the house itself was this U-shaped monstrosity. And it was built out of cinder blocks, which is super, super unusual for Oregon area. This was still in Oregon City, but way out in the country. I'd never even seen a house built out of cinder blocks until we bought that house. So a slab foundation of cinder blocks, which is almost every house you'll find in Oregon is built with a perimeter foundation and stick-built wood-framed house. So this is totally out of the ordinary. But that doesn't mean anything. We bought this house on this piece of property with the intent of building a house there because the house was just junk. It was not even worth saving as a house. At least we thought that. Later somebody did, but we bought it to build another house, and I was going to use the entire old house as my shop. Now this was super exciting for me because the house was big. I got my shop set up in this old building. So I basically set up in what would have been the kitchen, nook, like main area. And then there were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, which we left. And then there was a living room area, which I just used for storage. And right at the beginning, when I started being out there later at night after it got dark, I started feeling afraid. And I literally would be out there by myself. I'm way out in the country, and I thought, well, it's because I'm not used to this. I grew up in the suburbs and always have been in the city. And now I'm out in a house in the middle of nowhere, and I'm at my shop. It's dark outside. But no, I could feel, I just got to call it pure evil in that house, and especially after dark. There were several times that I literally got terrified, like terror that I've never known through my entire body for no reason. I'm out there just sawing wood, and all of a sudden I just feel this terror, like I'm gonna die instantly. One time I literally ran out, left all the lights on, just locked the door and threw it shut, and went back to, we were living in a house, several miles from there, like 15 minutes from there at the time. Went all the way back and left all the lights on and everything. I was so scared I had to get out of there. Now, I could not explain this. I've never felt this way before ever in my life. So it got to a point I would not stay in my shop there until after dark. I would not stay there because I was so scared. I would hear things. I don't know if I was just hearing noises out in the country. You know, I'm out here now kind of in the country, and you hear noises at night. It doesn't even affect me at all, but there it was bad. I knew something was wrong with this place, but I literally did not tell anybody because I was embarrassed. I had always said, all this stuff is BS, ghosts and spirits and all that is, I don't believe in it. So I was embarrassed that I was terrified about this stuff. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my wife at the time. I didn't tell anyone about this. So then I had several things happen that basically reinforced what I had been feeling. I had a neighbor stop over, just to say hi, talk to him for a few minutes. And one of the first things they said is, have you seen any ghosts here? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And they said, our kids used to come over here and then they stayed overnight here a couple times. And they said there were ghosts here that terrified them and terrorized them at night. And they were so scared they would never come over to this house again. They never came over here again. And I was like, oh, well, that's weird. But I didn't want to admit at the time that I had seen anything like this or felt anything like this. So I just said, oh, that's crazy. But I didn't say anything. Then we had a neighbor across the street. And I went over there. He asked me the same thing. He said that he had been over there and there was evil spirits over there at that house. I never said anything to him about it. This was the first time I ever met him. I was just talking to him, and he tells me about that. And he tells me that the guy that lived there before us and who had built the house was a very strange guy. And he also said that there was a wine cellar under the house. Now, we knew that there was grapevines all through the property. They had been using the property, the 20 acres, well, about 5-6 acres of it to grow grapes. So there's all these grapevines. And the neighbor said, well, there's a wine cellar underneath that house, underneath the living room. I've been in the wine cellar. And so this really piqued my interest because this is a slab foundation. There's no entry to anywhere that I could see that was under the house. And so I'm like, this is really suspicious. I went back to the house and I'm looking all through the living room. And the living room, because we were just using it for storage, it had this carpet down. And I hadn't pulled up the carpet because I didn't want to have to get rid of it. So I pull up the carpet, and right in the middle of the floor, there is a piece where the concrete was patched, and it looks about the right size for a staircase going down into a basement. And I asked the guy, where's the staircase to get in the basement? He said, it's inside the house. He couldn't remember where, but it's inside the house. He said he hadn't been over there for like 10 years because he was scared to go over to this house. So in this picture, you can see this opening I found in the floor that had been concreted over. So now I'm like, holy cow. Are there like dead bodies buried under this house? Did something weird go on here? I got to find out. So I broke out that concrete patch and I started digging down. It was filled under there with sand. Now all the ground around there was hard clay. And towards the end of the foundation, I dug down and there was a little tiny bit of sand they had put down to pour the slab on, and then it was just clay. But where this spot was in the middle of the living room floor, it was sand. And I dug with a friend about 5 feet deep. And we got to about 5 feet deep and it was still sand. Like this had been filled in with sand in the past. Now it was so much work digging, and the more I dug, the more I got this feeling like every time I went out there to dig and got into that hole and dug, I just got this terror like feeling again, like you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be digging down here and you shouldn't be doing anything. So I got to the point I said, I can't dig anymore. We abandoned the whole thing. We filled it back up with the sand and covered it with plywood. I lived in that house for about a year, and then we eventually sold it. During that year, I would not go out to that garage after dark. I would never, because I was so scared of the way it felt out there and what was out there. I never saw anything. I did hear things, but I don't know if I was just hearing normal stuff and attributing it to something supernatural. And nothing ever physically happened, but that's the story. And that's how I eventually came to believe that there can be evil spirits in a place. Now, over the year that we lived there, there was 2 or 3 other people that eventually came by and said the exact same thing, that they had experienced this feeling, these evil spirits in this house. So by the time we moved, I had myself and then 5 other people that I never mentioned anything, that the first thing they would tell me when they met me was about these evil spirits. So this was like very, very well known. This house was not right. So now I'm a believer. I'm a believer that their places can have bad spirits, bad juju. I don't know what it was. I don't know if there was 50 bodies buried under that slab of that house. I suspect there is something really bad that went on in whatever that basement thing was, the wine cellar that he supposedly had there. But I am glad that I never figured it out, because maybe that would have like stayed with me. Who knows? So this was a time I got divorced, and we moved out of that property, sold it. I then went to live with my mom in her house. Everything was fine. I didn't feel anything. I bought a house in Oregon in Lake Oswego, which I lived in for like 16 years after that. I got married to Esperanza. We lived there for many, many years, raised our kids in that house, and everything was great. When our kids graduated from high school, we moved down to Vista, California, just Esperanza and myself, and we bought a house there. And this is the house that you can see if you go way back to the beginning of Douglas and Esperanza's adventures and watch our first few videos. You'll see our house that we had in Vista, California, which is the San Diego area, San Diego County. Now, that house, I wouldn't say was haunted. That house seemed to have something bad in one of the bedrooms. I had asked Esperanza, do you like this room? What is this room? What vibes does this room give you? And she said, it feels like something really bad happened in this room. I thought so too. So we basically never went in that room. We used it for a guest room. Usually the kids, when we had family, the kids would stay in that room. But other than that, we didn't like to go in there. We kept the door closed and just kind of like stayed out of that room. Now, what was going on there? I have no idea. But the rest of the house was fine. I will say that the house never felt warm and cozy and comfortable. It always felt kind of cold, but it didn't feel bad. It just felt kind of cold, and I don't know how to explain it. Like, not normal, a little bit less than normal, but not bad. So fast forward, we move down to Mexico. We buy this piece of property here that I'm standing on right now, and this is going to be our new home. We're going to build on it. It was a bare lot when we started, so there wasn't any house here. During the process of buying this property, we find out that it sits on the site of a traditional Indian campsite. Now, I'm in Mexico. They call them Indians here. If you call them Native Americans here, Mexicans have no idea what you're talking about. So sorry if it's not PC in the US and Canada, but here in Mexico, they call the Indians Indians still. So I'm going to call them Indians. Anyways, this was the site where the Indians came and camped when they fished and clammed out on the sea, which is about 600 feet that way. And there used to be two sand dunes here, and this was right in between the two sand dunes. That's why they probably chose it. It's probably somewhat sheltered from the wind and all that. Now, they didn't live down here full time because there's no water down here until they dug wells, which they had to dig really deep, and the Indians didn't dig wells. So they were looking for surface water. They could only live where there was surface water, and that's way up in the mountains. So that's where they lived. They just came down here to get clams and fish in the ocean, but this is where they camped. And this, when the missionaries came, this is where the Indians were camped, right where I am right now. Here, and straight down back where the camera's pointing, about 300 yards was the area where they camped. And you can see it here on this map. The purple area is our lot, and then the dark blue area is the area that they've identified that is full of artifacts from the Indians camping for thousands of years in this location. I was a little concerned with all of my past experience, and Esperanza has experienced the same thing in houses before we met, of having bad feelings and feeling like there was bad spirits in places. We're like, oh my gosh, we are going to be building on a site that was possibly an Indian burial ground, because we asked the archaeologists, what did the Indians do with their dead? And he said, the Indians that were here, when someone died, they were just left wherever they died. And, you know, the animals came and got them. This was a natural process. And this is how the Indians treated the life cycle and death. They just left the dead where they died and let nature take its course. So there was a possibility that there could be, you know, people that had died on this property and that were here, and maybe there was bad spirits. Now, I don't want to get anybody scared about pufferfish villas while we're talking about this, because luckily the archaeological site where between the two sand dunes is just up here, right about where our our shop building, our hidden bungalow is. Farther down this way where the pufferfish villas is built, that is basically underneath what was the first sand dune originally here. And so nobody camped there, and there shouldn't be any problem with there. And we live down there, and it feels great down there. It's awesome. But we were just a little bit in the back of our head concerned, like, gosh, I hope there's no evil, bad feelings in this place. We built our shop here originally and lived in our RV, which we've then sold because we built our hidden bungalow, and we live in that inside the shop. And if you're interested in seeing that, go back through our videos. We've got videos on building everything here, the hidden bungalow, everything. So now we've been living in the hidden bungalow for about 9 months, and we've been living on the property here in the RV just a few steps away, a total of almost 2 years total that we've been living here on the property. Have we experienced any bad spirits or anything bad? Luckily, no. And I will even say that this place feels very happy, very content. It feels like home here where we live. We love it. We both feel like we're home, we're happy, and this is our safe place. Now, I've lived lots of other places that I would call neutral. They didn't really feel happy and comfortable, but they didn't feel bad. It was just like neutral, like a generic place to live. So we are super happy that there are not any bad feelings or spirits here. And we're so happy that we can live in this place that has all this history. And it's just kind of cool to know that we're living on the spot that people came down to and camped at for thousands of years and used it right here where we are right now. So that's kind of a cool history. And we're so happy to be able to be the next generation to use this land. And the next generation, after we're long dead and gone, and our stuff is all the dust, and somebody else comes here and sets down roots here, hopefully they'll have an awesome time too. So I hope you enjoyed this video kind of talking about a very strange subject, especially for my channel. But, you know, I had that dream last night, and I was just driven to tell this story. All right. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if you did. Don't forget to subscribe, and never forget to live before you die.